Scale Your Mastery podcast welcomes Kristen, a dynamic individual with a powerful story of transformation. Kristen's journey reveals how overcoming profound health challenges led to discovering her unique mastery, and I'll let her tell you all about it. So her path is also a testament to the power of self-love and healing and aligning with one's true purpose. And we like to say also mastery. So in this episode, we're going to explore Kristen's experience so you can illuminate your own path to mastery. We're hoping our discussion will create an inner dialogue that helps light up your path so you can experience more joy and fulfillment along your journey. So, my name is Tracy D. Malone, and I am the host for Scale Your Mastery podcast. What is mastery? We define mastery as the ability to do a physical or mental activity at a high level while allowing your true personality to shine through. I truly believe the world would be a better place if more people discovered their mastery and operated in it at a high level. So I'm hoping that our conversation today will help open up new ideas for those of you who still need to discover your mastery or how to put it to its highest and best use. So if you're joining us live or watching the replay, thank you so much. Now, keep in mind, this is an interactive conversation and you're encouraged to respond in the comments down below. So, audience, I want to get you engaged. Here's your first question before we bring on Kristen. What innate natural talent or mastery do you possess? Okay, think about that. Get your notepad, and pen out. So, Christian, I want to welcome you to today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Now, we've talked before, right? And you had shared with me an amazing journey and transformation that you went through in your own life. And I'm hoping today, just by sharing your story, you'll help other people discover their true potential. So, with that being the emphasis, right, we're also going to be talking about aligning mastery and being able to achieve that on a personal level. So I want to again welcome you. Thank you for joining us today. And I want you to start by telling us your turning point that sparked your journey to discovering your mastery.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me here. Honestly,
Mhm.
my health is just getting to a point to where it was spiraling out of control. A team of specialists. I was seeing more doctors than I care to remember, was diagnosed with more conditions than I cared to even write down or keep track of. And it was just getting to a point to where, what are my options? The doctors told me it was just kind of wait and watch and see on a lot of things. And it literally got to the point to where they said I just ultimately needed to accept the fact that I was going to have a reduced quality of life. And I sat with that and I was like, I'm not okay with that. You want me to just sit around and wait to see if I end up paralyzed from the neck down?
Mm,
That's not an option for me.
mm.
So I started to look at that and evaluate instead of feeling sorry for myself or letting that destroy me or take on that identity of my life being over because I have chronic health conditions. Instead, I started to do my own research and really advocate for my own health and to look deeper into what I could do to help myself feel better.
Wow, that is amazing that you took control of your own health in spite of what the doctor said, that you refuse to believe that or accept it as your new normal, right? There's so many people out there today that are either listening or not listening to this or know someone who has a chronic condition. And it's so prevalent in our world today. Like going to the doctor and not being able to get a complete, diagnosis, a definitive diagnosis is so much more common than ever. So I applaud you for taking control and taking your destiny into your own hands, right? Because at the end of the day, we each have a body that we were gifted with, right? For this journey called life. And it's up to us to take care of that. So applaud you for that. Thank you so much. So I can already tell this is going to be very eye opening out there for anyone who's in the audience listening. And audience, here's your next question. We're going to go to Christian right after this, but I want you to answer this. Have you ever had a health challenge or something happen in your life that changed your perspective? Right? So, Kristen, I'm sure that what you went through changed your perspective, right? On so many levels. So, I want you to help us to understand what role did taking control of your own healing process, what role did that play in your journey of being able to self discover and self love?
Well, it was really starting to look down the rabbit hole of everything that could be considered beneficial, really. And when I started to do that, I found that a lot of things ultimately in people link back to repressed emotions or link back to trauma or back to things that we haven't really dealt with internally, even if it's in people pleasing techniques or things that we've adapted to as a way to survive. But oftentimes these things are all wrapped up in what we do and how that affects us. So when I started evaluating the entire picture health wise, I looked at underlying things that could have caused certain health issues and things I could do to help implement holistically to help my body heal, to strengthen my body. But then that also led me to discover that if you are going to truly take care of your body, then you have to nourish your body. And so that's
Mm,
also where caring for self and loving your own self comes in, because often we say things to ourselves internally, this internal dialogue that we feed ourselves constantly. We say things to ourselves that we would never, ever say to someone that we care about or we
mm,
love. So just becoming more cognizant and aware of that, and really looking at the entire picture versus just trying to band aid a symptom.
mm, mm-hmm. That is so good. So before we get further into it, because like I can see now we're getting deeper by the moment, right? Just remind everybody, what is your mastery? What would you describe as your mastery?
Well, I learned early on when I look back at everything that I had enjoyed doing. Um, Really, there was a commonality. And I worked in the dental field. I enjoyed it because of the patients. I enjoyed it because I was able to put them at ease. When I worked as a server, I enjoyed it because I could always tell when someone was having a bad day, and I made it my personal goal to make them laugh or to make them smile, even though they might have come off as a little grouchy. I wanted to make sure they left feeling better than when they came. And so even in my photography business, in my company, I've noticed that I connect with the families, I connect with the people. And so it's not like it's a little business exchange, but it's much more of a interwoven interaction. And
Mm,
so I realized that the way I connect with people is unique compared to a lot of people. And I found
mm,
that I have a way of trying to understand people.
mm-hmm,
And doing so, when I read people, I guess you could say, is that understanding them, really trying to see things from their perspective, has
mm-hmm,
given me an ability to be much more loving and understanding and compassionate. Because a lot of people will say that they approach things or try to look at things from another person's view, but you really have to be able to put your place in their place.
mm-hmm,
And that's not something that a lot of people are really capable of doing.
mm-hmm. Wow, I love it. So, I'm very intrigued by your mastery, which we like to say is you read people. That is so phenomenal. There's a lot of people in the world today would just love to be heard or seen. And the fact that you have that gift and you can give that gift to them is truly amazing. And the other thing is that it really highlights that for your healing journey to take place, you did reach this ability at a high level to be able to give yourself self love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so I think it's really important to note that you can't give someone what you don't have. So the fact that you have self love, it empowers you to use your mastery to give that to others.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Boy, I tell you, the world really needs more of that right now. So, Kristen, in your role of uh, in your role of figuring out that healing process that involved self love, how would you say self love played a role in your healing? Because it's very powerful, right? Um, what type of transformation was able to take place? Like, because if you defied the odds the doctors gave you, that means you really tapped into a powerful source for healing yourself and then being able to give that away to others. And before you answer that, I want to ask the audience another question. How has self love impacted your life? And what steps can you take to cultivate more self love? Because I find that through mastery, it really does give you the ability to self love. So, Kristen, let's hear from you. What are your thoughts?
I would say that it really was a catalyst for change and action and movement. A lot of people don't realize, and this is especially what I've learned in studying holistic health. It has taught me that what I feel is actually not unique, but it is scientific proven fact. People don't realize how much our emotional well being is interwoven with our health overall. And you can focus on all you need to do with getting correct exercise and correct diet. But if
Hmm.
you are not taking care of your internal well being, you might see a little progress, but the
Hmm.
amount of progress compared to when you take care of your mental and emotional well being is going to be massively exponential in comparison to just doing the things that your health itself needs. And so when I really learned to cater to myself, which for me involved learning how to say no. It involved being comfortable with that word. It involved setting boundaries and knowing that there were healthy boundaries. It involved the fact that, you know, I might not always be able to make everyone happy, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Because it involved me accepting that I no matter worry anymore if I'm enough for everyone else, but I worry about am I enough for me? Because
Hmm.
that is the only person that we need to be enough for. So we are only ever in competition with ourselves and striving to be better than ourselves and progress in that manner. So self love really helped me to focus on working on my inner dialogue. I realized that I was always very kind and empathetic and loving, and I would listen to anyone in distress, and I would make sure that they were okay and
Hmm.
they were good. But yet there was this internal dialogue that played on a loop of, you're not enough. And I realized that I got in this habit of constantly giving and giving and giving. And while that is a good thing to give, it's a good thing to show love, it's a good thing to show compassion. But I think one of the most beneficial things that I heard, I did a therapy session called Art. And it's different because it's known to address topics of trauma and post traumatic stress disorder, but it can actually help reverse them in as little as 5 sessions.
Wow.
But she said one thing to me, and I just did 2 sessions, and it was amazing the massive difference. But she said one thing to me that I found as the biggest highlight from that is keep your shirt on. And what is the meaning of that? If you have an extra shirt to give, then by all means, give it away.
Hmm.
But if you do not have an extra shirt to give, then keep your shirt on. So you need to take care of yourself first because you are never going to be your best for anyone else if you're not filling your own cup first. So when you focus on filling your own cup internally, then that cup is going to flow over. That cup is going to overrun. You are going to have an excess to be able to give and care and help for others. But if you have a cup that is half full or half empty and you're constantly pouring out of that cup, it's going to get to a point to where you are going to have nothing left to give.
Wow, that is so powerful. And it just amplifies what you said before of learning to say no, right? I love what I heard someone say. No is a complete sentence,
Right.
right? Even if you don't put the period at the end, it's a complete sentence.
It doesn't need an explanation.
That part, I love that part. You don't have to give an explanation for any of your actions. and for any response, including no. I love that. Wow. I tell you, the fact that you're talking about we can change our health, we can change our physiological bodies by how we condition ourselves from the outside world is is phenomenal. Like it's mind blowing, right? And life changing. It is so
That,
wonderful. It is so wonderful. Wow. I'm so glad that you came out this other side of your experience because now we get to learn and glean from your experience to help us along our journey. It is so powerful. So so far we've been talking about the journey of self-discovery, of self-love, and of self-healing, right? And we've talked about the importance of finding your mastery and being able to honor that for yourself so that you can show up for others. That is so powerful. So, one of the things is um, as you were going through your process, I'm sure that you had some moments where you needed to do more research and you needed to figure some things out along the way, right? To get this holistic view of healing and wellness that you have today. What would you say are some things, or was there one thing, or were there several things that led you to explore holistic health? And what was your big drive to have that be a change for you in understanding wellness in general?
well, it got to a point to where I started looking into things that I could do to help strengthen myself. One of the things that I was diagnosed with was Ehlers-Danlos, which is a hypermobility disorder or a connective tissue disorder. And so the doctor sent me to a physical therapist to learn what normal was for my body. So I did a lot of physical therapy to train my body to know what normal was. From that point on, I started doing my own research. I did an online nutrition course. I did an online personal training course. So that I knew that I was able to maintain proper form, so that I knew I wasn't damaging myself. But something that helped me was really learning to listen internally. And a lot of the things that people teach for how to build muscle or how to build fitness routines,
Hmm.
something with a connective tissue disorder or an autoimmune disorder or overcoming chronic health issues or trying to combat those things, majority of what is out there is not what you want to listen to.
Mm.
A lot of people will tell you that it's about the amount of weight and how heavy you can lift. And I would say that is exactly what you want to avoid, because
Mm.
going too hard up front is going to cause damage. It can cause injuries. And then if you injure yourself, you're going to stop.
Mm.
So I started doing all of those little things. And then as I was researching that, and then little by little, you see implementation of progress and
Mm.
things moving forward. And so I would just keep doing more research, and down the rabbit hole I would go. And anytime I was trying to address a specific problem, because at that point in time I was on a minimum of 12 to 14 medications every single day. I was on another list of medications that were as needed. And so I would tackle one medication at a time, the one that I thought was doing the least amount of good for me, or that would be the safest to come off of. And I started doing the research on how to address that specific issue holistically and how to be able to support my body and give it what it needs while I tapered off of that. And
Mm.
so it was just a lot of little things over time that led to that. But when I realized how I was able to make the changes I was able to do, what I wanted to do is be able to understand that on a biological level and
Hmm.
on a scientific level, so that it's not just my personal story, but so that I actually have the understanding on a scientific viewpoint of how I was able to do what I was able to do. And that led me to furthering continue education. Sorry,
Mm.
when
Hmm.
and so then I decided to enroll in a course for holistic health education and holistic health coaching. I do also do life coaching, but I want to be able to combine those together
Mhm.
as well, to be able to help people look at the whole big picture
Mhm.
overall and to see how they can implement holistic things or an approach to their well-being, and to help them overall in their lives. So
Mhm.
really my main drive, um, in looking for furthering my understanding is so that I can use that coupled with my own experiences to be able to help others.
That is so good. So there's so much to unpack in what you just said. I just want to take a moment to just uh, review some of what you just mentioned. You were talking about that one period where you decided to go and do that further research. You know, was that, do you feel like that was like your intuition, if you want to call it that, leading you down that path?
I think to a degree it was definitely learning to listen to myself, because the more research I did, it got to where I would even notice all of a sudden I was craving certain foods. And so if I was craving that food, instead of just eating at the food, I started to look at the nutritional content in
Mm-hmm.
everything I what is the minerals that I get from that food? What is the vitamins that I get from that food? What are the amino acids that I get from that food? You know, what is my body telling me versus,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this food tastes amazing. I started
Mm-hmm.
to know there were foods that I was wanting that I didn't normally eat, or there were foods that I used to eat all the time that all of a sudden did not taste that appealing to me. Like I could eat it, but it didn't have that same appeal. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started using that and listening to my body and learning to focus in on that more,
Mm-hmm.
and to really dive down and use that as a tool for research as well. Learning to couple that with what is my body telling me.
Wow. So it's fascinating to hear you describe your process and your journey to get to this point. And the thing that keeps popping up for me is that that process that you're describing is how mastery develops. You know what I mean? Like in the beginning, there was a problem or something was going on and you wanted a solution. But even after you got your solution, you just kept going, right? To get a better, deeper understanding, right? And then now it's at the point where you surpass that, and now you understand enough to share with someone else to help them if they're on a similar path that you were on, with having being told by a doctor you're just going to be stuck with this condition and it's really not curable, right? So what you're describing to me, it's almost like watching an onion get peeled. You know, there's one layer after the other until you get to the bulb, the core in the middle. To me, this is a great example of how mastery is developed. Like, it's not enough just to scratch the surface. You get so inspired and curious that you just keep going, right? That is, what do you think about that?
I would say that's definitely very true. I mean, part of just diving down into that, also led me to something that is called epigenetics. And what scientists are discovering with epigenetics, to put it simply in terms that other people might be able to understand, if you refrigerate your tomato, many people are going to notice, hey, it's polarity. Some people do, some people don't, but I will tell you why I don't. When you put a tomato in the fridge, it actually alters its gene expression. You'll notice if you eat tomatoes and you're picky about your tomatoes like I am, that it will alter the texture. It will alter the flavor. Yes, it's going to preserve its life, but it does something to that tomato. And so that's literally what epigenetics is. Our environment, our stresses, our day to day life, there are things in our childhood and our adulthood that can literally alter our genes. And now it's not the same thing as a gene mutation,
Hmm.
because what it is it literally alters the gene expression.
Hmm.
But what makes that unique is that just like something can trigger a gene expression and cause a disease, you can also treat that and reverse the disease. So something that has been affected by epigenetics is an alteration in the gene expression, but it's not the same as a mutation. It's reversible, it's changeable, it's fixable. So understanding that also is something that made me dive into wanting to know more.
Mm, wow, that is powerful. Ooh, I tell you, I mean, it's amazing how we can take something we're curious about and turn it into a level of mastery that's big enough to serve other people, right? That is huge. I love the story about how your curiosity of epigenetics started. I mean, that is so fantastic, right? So in that is a good segue for what I want to talk about next, because truly listen to your story shows us that you can go from curiosity, turn into a passion, and then for a small few of us, it will also turn into purpose, right? So, talk to us about your journey of self love and self healing and how you've been able to turn that passion into purpose, like for your life's work.
Well, when it comes to purpose and passion, they really do go hand in hand. You can be passionate about something, but then if you feel like you're unable to achieve it, then that kind of dissipates. But
Hmm.
when you couple purpose and passion together, it's a literal mindset technique as well. And what is it that gives that such power? Your passion is something you're passionate about, right? Whether
Hmm.
it's you want to, help people feel better, you want to inspire that self love. But
Hmm.
real purpose comes from being able to create an impact, to give back. And so
Hmm.
when you couple something you are passionate about and use that to create a way to give back to others, then it really does help you to have that purpose as well. So one kind of leads to the other. And that's really why
Hmm.
I wanted to learn what I learned. And I realized that so many people just accept the answers, they accept the identity. And as long as you take that identity on, sometimes you'll talk to someone with chronic health issues and that's the first thing out of their mouth. I have this, or I can't do this because I can't do this. And as long as you think you can't do something,
Hmm.
you're right,
Yeah.
you won't be able to.
Hmm.
And so a lot of it is coupled with mindset, really, and helping people shift their dynamic and their perspective. But when I was able to make those transitions in my own health and to learn to love myself, it helped me to see that, well, I mean, I've always been passionate about helping people, you
Hmm.
know? So that really gives me a way to use something that personal experience can also benefit others. And
Hmm.
so, therefore, that was part of understanding the commonality and why I have always understood or been drawn to every field, every field I've worked, why I liked it. That commonality, the people, the serving the people, the helping the people. And so looking at that from a perspective of being able to use my own journey to help them. And then that in itself creates that purpose. And it's something that was there all along.
Hmm.
But I think sometimes we overly complicate things in our
Yes.
own mind. We're looking for something massive. And sometimes it's the simplest thing. It's been right in front of our faces the entire time.
That is so true. I mean, for myself, I can testify that what you just said is so true. This thing that I do now with, helping entrepreneurs, it's always been there. And I overlooked it. It was like, the left hand and the right hand, it's always been there. And I didn't even realize the value in it until one day, like you said, I finally got a chance to slow down in life long enough to take a look backwards. And then once I did that, it made so much sense. Like I could see back to my first corporate job. It was always there, but I never knew it. So when I slowed down long enough, it revealed itself. But I also had to get curious, right? Because even though I slowed down, if I wasn't curious enough, I never would have went down that rabbit hole to look back to see what's been going on. I mean, you're so right about that. I just love the idea that you are a people reader, right? And that this has become your talent and you've been able to look back and see it's always been there, right? So, can you give us a story about something that happened in an interaction with another being and then it started you to thinking that this was a powerful gift that you had to read people? Can you tell us a story?
Well, just a simple one of thinking back to my photography business. Even one of the first weddings that I shot, I remembered sitting at the table during the reception, eating with the vendors, and they asked me, they're like, "Do you know them?" I was like, "Well, I did their engagement photos." They're like, "No, do you know them?" I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "The family, the mom. You act like you know them." I was like, "I mean, I've met them before." But it was then that it really made me realize that I have this innate ability to feel at ease with people. And I'm always trying to soothe people and make them feel comfortable. But also, it's much more of a familiar type of relationship. It's always been one of my main goals. I've never called my clients. It's people that I serve,
Uh huh.
and I want to create an ongoing, lasting relationship with them. So for me, it wasn't just about a business transaction or a once and done, but trying to actually create a bond and a connection there that left lasting impact. One
Hmm.
thing I learned, especially with photography, I had a little prior experience with modeling early on, and I worked with a lot of photographers, and there were some photographers that were amazing photographers. They were great as far as their work was concerned, but the experience of working with them was horrible. It was atrocious. It was uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And so ultimately, what do you remember about that
Hmm.
interaction?
Hmm.
You don't remember the work. You remember the experience because even when you look at the photos, at the images, your brain goes straight to, oh, I didn't really like that. So it's just, it was very important to me, even when I delved into that on the business side of my photography company, that I always wanted to put people at ease. I always wanted to make them feel comfortable. And I always wanted to make sure that it was a pleasant experience. And so I realized that that was something that was unique then, but it had always been there. And I didn't really notice it until someone else pointed it out.
Hmm.
And people get so hung up in comparison, and we've heard the terminology imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
So looking at that, it helped me start to evaluate, what are my strengths? I might not be the most creative photographer or person out there,
Hmm.
but I don't need to be. I'm good at honing in on those intimate, unique moments. I'm good at those amazing candids that are the moments that quickly pass and fade. I'm anticipating. I'm watching for that. Why? Because I sense what's going on in the emotions. I read the people, and that helps me to interact with them. So it's all about embracing your own uniqueness and
Hmm.
your own authenticity instead of constantly comparing yourself to someone else and trying to be what you feel like their version of what you need to be is. Just focus on enhancing what your natural skills are.
I love that. That is so profound. And I couldn't agree with you more because I like to say that once you know what your mastery is, it really does give you, if you lean into it, it really does give you the power to be yourself, right? And I firmly believe that there's really no such thing as competition when you yourself are always putting yourself in position to be your highest and best self. The only competition is the other version of you. Like, there's no competition outside of self, right? If you're on that journey of always becoming a better version of you, the outside world really doesn't exist, not in terms of competition, right? And so I just believe, like I said at the beginning of our session, that the world really needs more people who are focused on their mastery and and doing their best to experience that at the highest level possible. Because I think if we all have that, we're not concerned about competition. We're not concerned about who's in front or who's behind. We're not concerned with anything other than how can I be better today than I was yesterday. And an environment like that, it can't help but to uplift other people around you, because your mastery that initially you were able to use to help yourself, now it helps other people. And so, right, that's why we're on this podcast, because you want to be able to get your message out. And the same with me. What I learned that I was doing, it was great that I figured out I've been doing it for a while, but now that I know it's not just for me, I'm trying to use it to help other people. And so I think the world needs more people who are willing to help others by way of their mastery, right? So one of the things that we were talking about is mastery can definitely influence decisions we make, right? Like, as your mastery was developing, it was influencing the research you did, and then discovering new avenues of research, like epigenetics, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you were discovering those new avenues of research and then taking what you previously got to the next level. So, talk to us about how your decisions um, around your mastery have actually influenced some of the challenging choices you may have made along the way.
So we all are going to face challenges. We live in environments and in worlds that are inherently stressful. Most of the time, we live at an extremely elevated stress level that is not normal, and typically we don't even know that it's not normal. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in this country, and one of the biggest contributors to heart disease is stress. So when you
Mm,
learn that and you really focus in on that, you learn that there's so much interconnected in just our environments. And so one of the challenges I would say that it really led me to evaluate is, well, what is causing stress still in my
mm,
life? And sometimes that's not easy to do, because
mm,
sometimes something love
mm.
may be a massive contributor to the stress, you
Something
know?
or someone.
Yeah. So sometimes it can get a little challenging because it's
Yeah.
a very like interwoven dynamic there.
Hmm.
Is it our job? Is it our career? And so something to evaluate there also is, I was at this point in my life where I was always exhausted,
Mm,
and it didn't matter how much I slept. I
mm,
woke up exhausted. And so you start to evaluate what's causing it. What is going on in your life that is so challenging and overwhelming still? What is it that feels wrong? And that's part of learning to listen to yourself, to your body, and to start to make little changes.
hmm.
On the top of my LinkedIn, the banner says, "Enhance your life, decrease your stress." And part of that is also learning to love yourself. And so
Mm,
learning to apply those own things was a step-by-step progression that helped me to overcome challenges and to keep going. Because oftentimes, if we get overwhelmed or things get hard or things get stressful, and we decide we're done, right? People walk out of a job, or they walk out of, an environment, whatever it may be, but they do so because they have reached a breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to evaluate and predict, in essence, what those things are that are causing that in your life, to prevent that. In essence, you could say prevent the volcano from erupting, because we tend to suppress so much and stuff it all down, and then it gets to a point to where you're sobbing over a missing sock.
Hmm.
The sock has nothing to do with why you're upset,
Nothing.
but you've been suppressing all of these things and turning them inward.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we hold things internally, the more damage it causes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a car. You can wash the car every single day. You can apply wax on it every single day. You can make it look shiny and great and amazing. But if you never change the oil, you're going to have problems.
Yes.
And so learning to really apply self-love in my own life and in my own understanding, even while I was through my healing process, right? Understanding my limitations. Because before that, I would push myself. I would push myself. And I would push myself and push myself until my body was like, no more. And I would end up so exhausted and in so much pain that I would end up in bed for 2 weeks straight because I couldn't move beyond that other than doing the absolute mandatory essentials that I had to function in my life. And that's not a way to live. So learning to evaluate and even make the hard choices, because sometimes the choices we need to make for what is best for ourselves aren't easy ones to make.
So true. So true. Now, I forgot. There's one question I want to ask you. Um, Give us an idea of this time frame where you realize you had this illness that or this chronic condition. The doctor said what they said, versus that point where you reached and you said, I'm going to do my own research, and then you started getting results. What was that time frame? Was it years, months? What was the period of time that it happened over?
I would say the frustration, of refusing to accept that that was the best case scenario was almost instantaneously.
Mm,
But the progression was really something that continued to grow
mhm,
over years. It even got
mm,
to the point to where, even some of my doctors asked me what I had been doing because my health was good. And it had only
mm.
been, a short while previously
Really?
that it wasn't. So,
Mm,
it's just been an ongoing
mhm,
process. Like I said,
mhm,
I systematically attack those medicines one by
mhm,
one.
mhm,
So your body and things that break down in it and your damages, they didn't happen overnight.
mhm,
And they're not going to repair overnight. And so that's part of something that's important for people to understand
mhm,
is that it's about making changes in a manner that is sustainable. So you
mm,
never want to try to attack everything at once. That's probably
mhm,
going to cause stress in your body, which is going to cause inflammation, which is going to cause pain.
mm.
So looking at it from a systematic approach and little by little progress. So I knew immediately that I wasn't okay with that answer, and I sought out to try to find what I could do.
Mhm,
And the progress was very slow in the beginning, but as you stay with that habit, and that's what it's really all about, is creating a habit that is sustainable.
mhm.
And as you stay with that, you start to see little changes. It's like the compound theory or the compound effect, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But most people, if you gave them the chance of having $1 million, or if you gave them the chance of having $1 that doubled in value every single day,
Mhm.
most would instantaneously take the million without thinking about it, not realizing that at the end of 30 days, that $1 that doubled in value every single day is going to be worth far more than the $1 million. So we might not always see instantaneous effects, but that doesn't mean that they're not occurring on a cellular and metabolic level.
That is so good. I feel the exact same way with being able to scale your brand, your mastery, and your business. When you string together those three and scale them all at the same time, it really gives your business this compound effect. I totally agree with what you're saying. Your example is related to health and the outcome of doing the right thing over and over and over. And the same thing applies in business as well. It is, like you said, we don't even realize how much compounding is actually taking place because it's happening almost out of sight, right? Because if you do an activity today, you know that you did the activity, but you don't necessarily see the result until days, weeks, or months, or years later, right? But it's that compounding, it's that repetition of doing the next right thing over and over and over that makes the difference, that causes us to eventually see, this is the outcome of all of the effort. Like with you in your case, like you made those decisions one day after the other and you stuck with it. And then to the point where even the doctors had to say, like, you're so much better. Like, you know, what's happening? Right? Because they could, at that point, they couldn't deny the physical evidence was right there in front of them that your outcome was totally opposite of what they had already resigned, right? That is so powerful. Wow. So we've got about 8 to 10 minutes or so left. So there are a few more questions I want to ask you. This is really, really great to me. I mean, I'm learning a lot about your journey of mastery, and I'm sure I can apply once I have a chance to digest it all. I can apply it to my own life. So, Kristen, well, first of all, let me just go back. I forgot about the audience. I want I want to go back and ask and bring the audience back into the conversation, just in case they left. The question now, audience, is how has knowing your strengths, or how has accepting your mastery helped you make better decisions? Right? Because you heard Kristen's story. Once she realized what her mastery was, she started making decisions that aligned with her mastery. So what about you? All right, Kristen. So we're back to this. I want to make sure that I give you an opportunity to talk to the audience today about what you hope they take away from your story. I know that you have this desire, the strong desire like I do, to help others. And our conversation today, I'm sure, is going to help others find their way and embrace their own mastery. So, what do you want them to take away, or what advice would you give to those who are out there looking to discover their mastery or just get enough courage to take it to the next level?
I would say sometimes you need to slow down to be aware of what's in your environment. Sometimes the right opportunity, or like with me, it was something that was there all along. So sometimes you might just need to look to be able to see that. But I would hope that for people, the biggest takeaway that they get is to realize that as long as they think there's another option, nothing is permanent.
Mm-hmm.
You have more power and more control than you realize. And something that I learned along the way, oftentimes people with a lot of health issues are people pleasers. They are people that have trauma responses. They are people, those things are ingrained in them because of the difficulties that they have went through in life. And I learned a valuable lesson along the way is that you can't save people, and it's not your job to.
Mm-hmm.
It's your job to use your inherent skill and your ability to be able to light the way, to show people that there's an alternative option, a way to move forward. And so the biggest lesson that I would hope that people gain from my experience is to see that if they want to work on their health conditions, if they believe that there is another reality for them, it's because there is. We wouldn't have the thoughts we have and the dreams we have if attaining them wasn't a possibility. So if there is something inside of you telling you that this isn't enough, this isn't what I want, right? and you know that you can do better, that you deserve better, that you want more, then a lot of that is mindset, and it's looking at it from a different perspective. Even when we face challenges and adversity, to look for the lesson in that situation rather than ultimately falling into the victim mindset constantly of, oh, this happened to me, it was horrible. Granted, yeah, it was horrible and it was bad, and I'm sorry you went through that. But if you ask most people that have suffered adversity in their life and overcome it, the number one thing they'll tell you is that they're thankful.
Yeah.
I used to say prayers and I would be thankful for my trials, and I thought, what in the world is wrong with me? Why am I thankful for that? I was thankful for it because it taught me a strength I had and an ability I had to be able to move forward and to progress despite the challenges that I was faced with.
Wow, that is so impressive. That is so inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. My takeaway is that we can change our mindset, and our mindset can actually change our physical bodies. That's my takeaway today. Well, listeners, audience, if you're out there, I hope that you have enjoyed this as much as I did. This has been so fascinating. And before we sign off today, Kristen, go ahead and tell us, how can people get in touch with you?
So for now, everything is pretty much listed under St. Shore Photography. I do post little bits of healing and self-love videos on TikTok. LinkedIn is just underneath my first and last name, Kristin St. I am devoting that page more through self-love advocacy and pursuing holistic health and coaching and public speaking. And then I also have my regular website, which is stshorephotography.com, which is primarily geared towards weddings and families and couples.
Nice. That is brilliant. Well, audience, you heard it here first. She is the people reader. Kristen has a gift for reading people. And I'm sure that by this conversation today, you would agree that her heart is in the right place. She wants to help others. And Kristen, tell us real quick, what can we expect from you next? What's happening next for you?
Next is to complete schooling. So finish up my certification and accreditation for holistic health coaching. And I do have an event public speaking Thursday. So it's just a lot of exciting things coming up, and so just looking to further that and really use my voice and my knowledge and my past and my circumstances to be able to help others.
Wonderful. Wow. What a great way to wrap up our session today. My name is Tracy D. Malone, and I am the host of Scale Your Mastery podcast. See you on the next episode. Thank you so much, Kristen. It was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.